Delighted to say we can welcome Dame Priti Patel to the show this morning. Dame Priti,
good morning.
Good morning there. We were talking about Keir Starmer saying we're now back on the world stage. Were you aware that we weren't on the world stage?
What a load of nonsense, quite frankly. That is utter rubbish from Keir Starmer, not for the first time. It was Britain that led the international efforts when it came to Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. So I think he needs to go away and do some homework. And of course, it was Conservatives in government that led the way when it came to Britain post-Brexit, our place in the world, securing those trade deals, over 70 trade agreements during our tenure in government, Eamon. So we're not going to listen to that nonsense from Keir Starmer, who just constantly wants to betray Britain, the democratic vote of the British people when it came to the Brexit referendum. And I think he needs to really go back and recalibrate his very smug comments.
Look, comments in the newspapers today, the headlines rule everything. You know, 95% of them very anti what happened, summed up by The Sun, which says we've been done up like a kipper. And the Mirror, though, this morning says this deal is a win-win. It's a win for shoppers, it's a win for tourists, it's a win for travellers, it's a win for businesses who will all feel the benefit. Do you accept that?
Well, the Mirror is the propaganda sheet for the Labour Party. There's no evidence for that, Eamon. I mean, let's see the detail. Where's the economic impact assessment? The stuff on border and passport queues is just nonsense, because I don't think your viewers are fully aware of the fact that the EU have a digital system coming in anyway called the EU entry and exit system, which is basically their equivalent to the digital border system that we were put in place in the UK because the world has gone digital. And yet the government and Starmer claim that this is some great win. And by the way, when that comes in October, it will lead to queues because we have to all provide our biometrics and lots of personal data. So this is just wrong. It's misleading. You know, the government were claiming something like a £9 billion boost to the economy. But yet, if you look at the detail, there are no facts on the figures. And by the way, that's over a 15-year period. They basically run down our country and our economy, for their own purposes, and then inflate the figures to suit them for themselves. So this is simply not factually correct. And, if newspapers like the Mirror want to put headlines like that forward, they need to show the facts and the details and the economic assessments, which, as far as I can see, not even the British government has done that so far.
Well, the British government is saying that they had to renegotiate with the EU because the deal that the Tories passed was full of holes. It wasn't oven ready, like Boris Johnson had promised. There were queues at Dover because firms were struggling with all of the red tape that was left by Brexit. Boris Johnson had claimed that there'd be no border in the Irish Sea, but we know with the Northern Ireland Protocol there were still customs checks between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and there was a sense that the deal was rushed through government. This Get Brexit Done campaign, there was very limited scrutiny. So the government would say that you didn't take advantage of Brexit.
Well, I'm very sorry to say I disagree with all of that. And look, I'm standing in front of the Parliament building right now, and I can tell you there was plenty of scrutiny in the House of Commons. Unlike the government yesterday, who were hiding, they refused to come to Parliament to present their so-called reset. And there's a very important point that I do want to make about your comments, is that is completely untrue to say there was no scrutiny. But actually, those arrangements that were put in place by the Conservative government and Conservative governments were transitional arrangements. And basically, we were the ones that secured the trade cooperation agreement, which Keir Starmer, when he was Shadow Brexit Secretary and running campaigns to unpick Brexit, said could never be achieved. We were the ones that secured the tariff-free trade deal with the EU. Starmer said that couldn't be achieved. We were the ones that dealt with the security partnership, and Starmer said that could never be achieved. We had the greatest law enforcement
let me put this another way,
under
Dame Priti.
Conservatives post-Brexit, which Starmer said could not be achieved.
Is this a betrayal of Brexit then?
100% it is. Keir Starmer never believed in Brexit. He spent all his time campaigning to unpick Brexit. He was being dishonest with the British public. He basically did not go into the general election last year and say that his reset would mean that we'd become a rule taker all over again and under the European Court of Justice, which is effectively what has happened. He deceived the British public. He never said that we'd end up paying the EU, and that's what we are doing again. Those were the fundamental reasons why the public voted to leave the EU and gave us as Conservatives in government that clear instruction that they wanted to leave and left us to get on and do that work, the hard work of getting Brexit done and leaving the EU.
Shadow Foreign Secretary, final point, briefly, quickly. Keir Starmer, he likes to give things away. We're in Gibraltar this morning. Do you think Gibraltar will be one of those things he's trying to give away?
We should never trust Keir Starmer. You know, he's screwing things up domestically, so he gets on the international bandwagon. He's selling us out, not just on Brexit, but on Chagos. And now, we saw it last week, we're hearing it again already. We're hearing all sorts of things about Gibraltar. We'll hold them to account, Eamon, on this. But when Labour negotiates, Britain always seems to lose.
Shadow Foreign Secretary, appreciate your time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Well, Fraser Myers is still with us. He's across all of that. What did you make of what you just heard from Dame Priti Patel?
Well, she's really come out swinging. I mean, I think it's good to see people on the Brexit side, the Conservatives and, of course, Reform, going really hard against this deal because it is a betrayal of Brexit. I hope that it doesn't stand by the time the next election comes around. People did not vote to give away so much power to the European Union, and in exchange for, a few crumbs of growth. It is a bad deal, and it's one of a series of bad deals that Keir Starmer seems to have negotiated.
Do you think it would be reversed by the Conservatives or reversed by Reform if they were to form the next government?
Well, I think the worrying thing is that on the because the fishing aspect, that includes sanctions if it's reversed. So it will actually be quite difficult to unpick. Hopefully there will be other negotiations and things can move forward. But as things stand, it will be quite hard.
OK, Fraser Myers, good to see you this morning. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Fraser. Appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. So there is concern about the deal in Gibraltar, and our reporter Jack Carson's there for us this morning. So let's cross to him and let's and fill in the details there as to what the fears are. Jack.
Well, thank you very much, Eamon and Ellie. You join us in Gibraltar, what are known as the Union Jack or referendum steps. Let me get out the way so you can have a look at this. So these steps have been painted in memory of that 1967 referendum, which asked whether Gibraltar wanted Spanish sovereignty as well as retaining their British sovereignty, or whether they wanted to remain Gibraltarian and have retained their British sovereignty. And they voted overwhelmingly in that referendum, 99.6%. To remain British. So there is a real deep patriotic feeling here in Gibraltar, and that is where the concerns are coming from over this possible deal that we're seeing and hearing from yesterday, particularly at that EU-UK summit, that a deal is very close indeed. The details of that deal we don't know, but there have been concerns in the recent few weeks when the Spanish Foreign Minister, José Manuel Albares, said that in order for the UK and the EU to have a full relationship going forward, there needed to be an agreement on Gibraltar. We know that Spain still has and retains its sovereignty claims over Gibraltar, and there are also concerns around what happens at Gibraltar International Airport, whether there could be Madrid border officials at that airport that the British citizens going to a British overseas territory might have to show their passports to in order to gain entry into the country. Here's what Antonio Costa of the European Council said yesterday at that EU summit.
Gibraltar, the Commission and the United Kingdom government are talking, negotiating. Maros Sefcovic and David Lammy is making a very good job. It's an ongoing job, work, and my feeling is we are not very close to conclude this work.
We are very close.
No, very? Not very fast. Not very fast, sorry.
An important correction.
Well, Chief Minister Picardo of Gibraltar, and stick with us because we're hopefully going to be speaking to him later on this morning, said that yesterday that a deal was excruciatingly close. We'll try and get some detail because there are a lot of concerns here. But you can see even just in the windows, the Union flag flying there next to the Gibraltar flag as well. People here are fiercely Gibraltarian, they are fiercely British, and so that's where these concerns come from. They do need to have an agreement. Of course, it was only a transitional agreement after the UK left the European Union, and border officials turning a bit of a blind eye to those 15,000 people that come in and out of the border every day. So an agreement close, but concerns about just exactly that means.